A step parenting expert, Chris Burns.
Women's mindset coach and stepmom, Chris Burns.
Welcome to the Step Parent Podcast. Welcome back to the Step Parent Podcast. If you're new here, thank you so much for being here. I am so excited to have you here. Make sure that you hit follow so that you don't miss future episodes. And if you are a returning listener, hello and welcome back. This podcast exists to speak into the lived experience of blended families, not just the polished version, not the filtered version, but the real, raw, vulnerable side of blended families. Today, we are talking about resentment and specifically why good men become resentful in blended families. Not angry men, not disengaged men, not selfish men, but resentful men. They are good men, but they do become quite resentful in their relationship or in their experience with the stepkids. So let's look in. Resentment doesn't come from doing nothing. It comes from doing too much for too long without any safety, without any clarity, or without any choice. Most men who end up resentful in blended families didn't start that way. They started out committed, hopeful, and willing. They started out really supportive. They started with good intentions. They wanted to help. They wanted to be the solid unit in the home. But because they were capable of these things, more has landed on them over time. And this is where overfunctioning begins. Overfunctioning is when a man consistently takes responsibility for things that should be a shared role. It should be something that's negotiated, and sometimes it's not his responsibility at all. He fixes, he provides, he absorbs, he problem solves, he smooths things over. And because he can handle it, the system adjusts accordingly around his capacity. But here's the truth that most men don't realize until resentment has taken root. Capability is not consent. Just because you can carry something doesn't mean that you should. And just because you don't say no doesn't mean that you are actively choosing yes. Over time, giving stops feeling like generosity and starts feeling like obligation. And that's where resentment grows. Another layer is unspoken expectations. Blended families are full of invisible rules that no one agreed to out loud, rules that seem to just exist over time. And men are expected to step up financially, to support emotionally, to stay calm, to be understanding, and to not complain. They really do need more reassurance, but because those expectations aren't spoken, they can't be negotiated. So they turn into a silent contract, and silent contracts always break. And when a man feels like he's constantly falling short of expectations that he never agreed to, the resentment just continues to build like a brick wall. It's one brick after the other. And he might not even really notice that he's feeling resentful at first. It can show up as irritation. It can show up as withdrawal. It could show up as sarcasm. Disengagement. There are so many different things that can come up before resentful is obvious. A sense of emotional distance that he can't explain will show up. But underneath that behavior is just the one thing. It's emotional unsafety. So let's talk about that. Responsibility without emotional safety is the fastest path to resentment. When a man doesn't feel safe to speak honestly, disagree with you, maybe set boundaries with you, or express frustration, or actually release healthy anger with you, resentment replaces truth. Because truth feels dangerous. If honesty has historically led to conflict in the relationship, withdrawal, punishment, or being misunderstood, the nervous system eventually shuts down. And resentment becomes safer than honesty. It simmers instead of exploding, if that lands, just to paint a picture. Now, I want to pause here and speak to the partners listening. Resentment isn't always loud. It's often quiet. It's compliance without connection, presence without intimacy, agreement without alignment. Men don't always know how to articulate resentment because they've been taught not to need anything. But unmet needs do not disappear, they harden. We are interrupting this episode for a quick ad break or a cheeky plug because we can. If resentment is already present in your blended family, it doesn't mean that you're failed. It means that you need better tools. The Step Parent Standard is designed to help step parents dismantle resentment, rebuild self-trust, and lead from emotional intelligence instead of reactivity. It's a decade of lived experience and training compounded into one space. Lifetime access for $299. This is where patterns stop repeating. This is where you finally start to lead your blended family. All right, back to the episode. Another major contributor to resentment is a loss of choice. Many men feel like their role slowly became compulsory, and what started as willingness turned into expectation. What starts as support turns into obligation. And when men feel trapped rather than choosing their role, resentment follows through. So choice really is everything. When men feel like they have no choice, no voice, no space to recalibrate, they emotionally disengage. That's the evidence. This isn't because they don't care. It's because caring has become costly. So let's talk about identity. Men in blended families often experience an identity fracture. They're expected to show up like a father, but reminded that they're not one. Expected to provide, but not necessarily lead. They're expected to commit, but without the full authority. And that ambiguity creates internal tension. And unresolved internal tension turns into resentment. Resentment is not the problem. It's the signal. It's the signal that boundaries have not been honored, that expectations haven't been clarified, and that emotional safety is missing in the home, missing in the blended family, missing in the relationship. So let's move into what will actually help men move forward with leadership. Again, as per last week's episode, stop overfunctioning. This is the biggest piece that you can take away. You are people-pleasing, overfunctioning. Your capability is not an invitation to self-abandon. Pull back where you've been overgiving without agreement. Be really radically responsible in this. You can make your expectations explicit. Unspoken expectations are resentment factories. Name them, clarify them, renegotiate them, and reclaim that. You can ask yourself regularly, am I choosing this or am I just complying? Choice restores agency in the home. The next thing is building emotional safety through honesty. Truth might be uncomfortable, but silence is corrosive. If you're not being honest with your partner, with your blended family dynamic, in terms of depending how old the children are, the kids in the home, with the in-laws, with the ex, if there's no honesty and you're not actually being honest with yourself, you are avoiding your accountability. This is a piece where you need to take the self-accountability and discipline and commitment of being radically responsible for your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. To partners listening, here is the reframe. Resentment in men is rarely about entitlement. It's about exhaustion without safety. When men feel seen, heard, and respected, resentment dissolves. If this episode resonated with you, please make sure that you hit follow on Spotify, leave a comment or drop in and do a rating. I would really appreciate that so much. Or you can just share it with someone that you know needs to hear a conversation just like this one. I am so grateful you are here. Thank you for listening, and thank you for staying in the work when I know that it's much easier to check out. I will see you next week.